Hello everyone, SunVector241 here, back with another tutorial. In this tutorial we'll be going through animations and applying animations to the player and to custom entities as well as attachable. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So first of all, what I'm going to show you is how to apply animations to custom entities. So right now I've got this custom entity right here. And all he does is really just fly around and attack chickens. As you can see, there's no animation on there. So with that, I'm going to show you how to create your own animations inside BlockBench and import them over onto the entity in Bridge. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, what you want to do is you want to load up your entity or your model of your entity in BlockBench. Then the next thing that you want to do is you want to head over to the Animate tab on the top right. As you can see here, there is Edit, Paint, and then Animate. So you click on Animate. Then on the top left, you click on Add Animation. So once you've clicked on Add Animation, this screen should pop up for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this animation the idle animation. So this animation will play when the entity is just idling around. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to name this animation.sign.idle. Then I can just leave the file blank since I don't have an existing file that I want to import it in. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to set the loop mode to loop so it always plays. And then for the rest of the settings, I'll just be leaving this all blank since I have nothing really to do here. If you want to fill in these yourself, you can, and you can play around with these, but for now I'm just going to leave this blank. So once you've named your animation, you can just click on confirm, and we are ready to start animating. And as you can see here, we've got our idle animation up here. So once you have created your animation file, or animation file, what you want to do is you want to select something on the model. And as you can see here, I have pretty much just selected the arm, and it's giving me a timeline for that arm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate this so it moves up and down for a little bit over 4 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this blue bar across the top. This makes it so it sets a time for the animation. So once you've set a time for your animation, you don't really need to do this unless you explicitly want to play and then let it stop and loop around. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that there. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just select rotate, so R, and then I'm just going to place a keyframe here. So rotation, we'll just click on add, and we've got our keyframe here. Then I'm just going to go halfway in between, move that up about 5 degrees, that should be good enough. Then go back to the end and reset it back down to 0. If I selected the wrong keyframe, which I apparently have done. Let's see if I can. There we go. And then I'll just add a new keyframe for this, and we will set that to 0. So if we play the animation, we can see the arm moves up and goes down. And then if we wanted to make it smoother, we could make it a Bezier. And then it's just a little bit smoother. If we set this all to Bezier, I believe this would make it a bit smoother. Yep. Looks a bit better already. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy all of these keyframes over and paste them all onto the right arm. I don't want the hand. So right arm, and we just paste that all across here. I believe I pasted that in the wrong section, so we just drag that back until there. There we go, unless I stuffed the timeline, so there we go. And as you can see here, the arms are a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse this so it's +5 on the right arm. Then both should move up and down the same rate. Yep, there we go. So now that we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just animate the body so it moves up and down a little bit, just to give it a bit more of a feel. So to do that, I'm just going to select the body, or actually the main instead. So we select everything that's a child as well. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow the same keyframes, except I'm going to change to move, and then just add a keyframe here for the position. Go here, move it up by a little bit, maybe something like that, 0.25 on the y-axis. Then go all the way to the end, and we'll move it back down by 0.25, so it's at 0 again. Then of course, to give it a bit more of a feel, we can just set a rotation. So this will move up by a tiny bit. If I can, let's say -5 degrees, and then back down again, and back to x0. So if we look at that, and apparently the animation isn't smooth, so we'll just change this all to Bezier. Let's see if it isn't. I believe, yep, I believe the smooth animation is actually better. So I'll just change all of this to smooth, not step. There we go. And of course we get some, yes, I believe it's something to do with it looping, but honestly it doesn't really matter as much. Yeah, it looks alright. There's not a lot that I have to do. So now that we've finished our animation, what we need to do is we need to save this animation. So to do this, all you have to do is just click on the save icon on the top left of your animation. Now if you haven't selected an existing file, this will pop up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this as sign.animation, and we'll just save it like that. So, and I'm just going to save the geo, but apparently that doesn't really matter for animation. So now that we've saved our animation, let's head on over to Bridge and import it onto the entity. So once you are in Bridge, what you want to do is you want to import your animation. Now in my specific case, I can just drag and drop the animation, but if you're on mobile, you would have to go up here and import the file through here. But since I'm on PC, I can just drag and drop onto Bridge. The next, you can click on Save Project, and then it'll automatically fill in where you want to save it. So rp/animations, and the actual animation name is OK. So we can just click on Confirm, and there is our animation. So now that we've got our animation imported, what we want to do is we want to apply it onto the entity. Now it's the client entity that you want to apply onto, not the behavior of the entity, since they are very different things and they behave, or the types of tools available to each are very different. since the client entity renders on the actual game itself, while the behavior is actually on the server. So just to keep that in mind, make sure you don't mix them up. Now, once you've got your client entity opened, what we want to do is we want to add our animation to the entity. And to do this, you just do what you did before what I did before in the attachables tutorial. If you haven't watched that, you can go watch that. But for now, I'm just going to add the animation. So apparently I've done that wrong. So I just do apostrophes and then animations. Then once you've got your animations inside that object, what you want to do is you want to select the name of your animation. So this can be anything that you want it to be, the actual name of your animation. I just like to keep it the same as the name of the animation, but you can name this whatever you want, since it'll only be used in the client entity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to name this idle, then put a colon, and then animation.idle or animation.sign.idle. So this is our animation identifier. If you remember what your identifier was, we can see that our identifier is right here, animation.sign.idle, and it's the exact same thing here. So animation.sign.idle, just to keep that in mind. Now, once you've imported your animation, next thing we'll be doing is just adding the scripts, just like before in the attachables tutorial. And then we'll just select animate, and we'll just select idle. And that's all we really need to do for it to play. And if we can look here, if we select our idle animation, it should play in bridge, but apparently it doesn't for some odd reason. So with that in mind, we'll just test this in game. Now that we are in game, what we're going to do is we're just going to spawn the sign.animation, and if I can get a closer look, yes, the animation is kind of playing. It's very slow though, so it's hardly noticeable, but it is playing. If I can get this entity to stop flying, please. If I can just, yep, come on. Yeah. So you can see the animation is actually kind of playing, but it's also not as noticeable. So what I'm going to do is to make it more noticeable is I'm going to apply a particle onto the animation, because you can apply particles onto animations or directly, as well as onto the animation controller. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to add it onto the animation directly before showing you how to do it on the animation controller. So what we're going to do is we're just going to head on over back to BlockBench. Then I'm just going to select the, I believe I should just select the main, that'll be fine. And then what we can do is we can just animate effects, I believe. Yep, there's an effect area. Then what we can do is we can just add the particle, and you can also add sounds if you wanted to, but for now I'm just going to add the particle. Then what I'm going to do is in the effect tab or in the effects field, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put the effect name of our client entity. So what's going to happen with the effect thing is you don't actually reference the particle name by its identifier. What you do is you reference the particle name by referencing the name from within the client entity. So what I'm going to name this is since I've got a custom particle effect that just spawns end rods or end rod particles, I'm just going to name this custom end rod. Then with the locator, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the locator that I have, which is the head particle, and that will spawn the particles where that locator is. Now with locators, if you don't know what locators are, they essentially allow you to pretty much add effects onto them, as well as, I believe, binding items to the locators. But for our use case, we're just only going to use the locator for the particle effect. Now if you wanted to add your own locator, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is just right click on a bone and then you just add a locator, and that will add the locator for you, and then you can just rename this whatever you want. But for now we'll just only use the one that we need. So now that we've got our locator and the keyframe set up, what we're going to do is we'll just save the animation, reopen it back up if I can find it again. Yep, there it is. And then just copy all of that in and paste it back into Bridge. Now that we've got our animation inside here, what we have to do is we have to define the effect. And to do this, we'll just do in the client entity, what we have to do is just add the particle effects, then name this custom end rod, and then since I am using a custom particle right here, I'm just going to use the custom end rod. So now that we have our entity working, we can just go back into Minecraft and see it in game. Creepy sounds. Alright, so as you can see, the particle is playing and the animation is also playing along with it. So that's just confirmation that the animation is actually playing. So next, what I'm going to show you is how to use animation controllers. Now there are actually two types of animation controllers. The first one is a behavior one. There is also an animation equivalent of that, and that just runs commands for you, or just allows you to run commands onto the client or the entity, and that's all handled server side. But the client animation controller is the one that handles all of the animations and the animation states. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you the client animation controller, then we'll move on to the behavior animation controllers and the animations. So let's get into it. So right now I have created this animation or an attack animation for the entity, and all it does is just a backflip. And what I'm going to do with this animation is I'm going to apply it onto the animation controller that I'm going to show you. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this animation. So all I have to do is just copy the animation into the bridge animation, or the animation that we've got here, if I can find it. I believe this is the one, and then we just paste it into there. We can close out of that. Now that we've got the animation in here, we'll just declare it. So we'll just do attack, and then we'll do animation.sign.attack. So that's pretty much all we have to do. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to create an animation controller, so this animation will only play when the entity is attacking. So we can use the animation controller to say that we want it to play this animation when the entity is is attacking. So to do this, we can just go to new file, client animation controller, make sure you select that one. Then all we have to do is just type in the controller. So usually you would put in controller dot your entity, or actually no, usually you would put your entity name dot control dot animation. If I can spell my entity name, sign mascot dot animation underscore controller, and usually you would do that for your entity, and for the most part you would only have one animation controller file, since you can have multiple animation controllers inside a single animation controller file, but that doesn't really matter. So we can just click on create, and we've got our animation controller. So now that we have our animation controller, we're just going to change this animation controller so it matches the name that we want to go with. So sign mascot, controller animation dot sign mascot. And now the next thing, which probably will confuse a lot of people, is how do they actually define states, and or well, actually how do they use this animation controller? Now, animation controllers are actually state machines. Almost like you'd have a state for attacking, then you'd have a state for idling, and you'd think of them as blocks of states, and what you can do is you can actually transition between each state. And each state allows you to do something while it's in that state. For example, playing an animation, playing an effect, or playing sounds, whatever you need. So right now, usually with an animation controller, you would have an entry point, which is called initial state. And this initial state just declares that this state right here should run first, or run before anything else is ran. So this will be the state that runs first before it transitions to other states. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a new state called attacking, like so. If I can spell it correctly, and usually you would have an object. Then what we're going to do is we are going to declare an animation for it. Now currently this animation controller is actually not linked up to our entity, so we're just going to do that real quick. So all you have to do is just go back to your client entity. Then all you have to do is just add a new animation, call it controller. Then what we can do is we could just define the controller identifier. So the controller identifier is here. If I can zoom in, apparently I cannot. So controller.animation.sign mascot. Then we can just declare the same identifier as we've got in the animation controller. So controller.animation.sign mascot. And there we go, accepted it. So now that we've got our animation controller linked up, now we want to play it. So to do this, all we have to do is just inside the scripts, below the idle animation, because we can actually have multiple animations running at the same time. But for our use case, we're just going to add the controller, and we have the idle animation playing along with it. So we just do controller, and that will constantly play the controller, animation controller. So now that we've linked up the animation controller, we can head on over back to the animation controller, and then what we're going to do is inside the attacking state, we're just going to declare animations. Then we're just going to declare the attack animation, and that's all we really need to do to declare the animation. Next, we want it so the animation only plays when the entity is attacking. Because right now, if I save this and I went into game, and if I place an entity down, it doesn't play the animation. So what we're going to do is inside the default state, which is where the entry point, since we actually defined it up here, or well, it's already defined up here, what we're going to do is we're going to define transitions, then the object, and then we're just going to select the attacking state. So we want to transition to the attacking state when this value is equal to true. So to do this, all we have to do is just declare the attacking state, and then we have to declare the state or the Boolean value that we want to test. Now, to test whether the entity is attacking, we use a variable called variable.attack_time. Now this actually isn't listed anywhere on bridge autocompletes, but it does exist for every single entity. And there are probably a couple more variables that we probably don't know, or I don't know, but I do know that variable.attack_time is used for when the entity is attacking. So to test whether the entity is actually attacking, all we have to do is just type in variable.attack_time is higher than 0.0. And that's pretty much all we have to do. And that will, when the entity is attacking, this will have a value that will start from 0 and will count up towards 1. So we're just testing whether the variable attack time is higher than 0, and we know that it's attacking, so we transition to this state. Then inside the state, what we're going to do is we're just going to transition back when the animation has finished playing. So we just do default or transitions, or we define transitions, then we declare the object, then we declare default, and then we just do query.animation, any animation finished. And once this animation has finished, it will transition back to the default state. So now that we've got that done, what we can do is we can actually test this in game. So we can just go into Minecraft, and as soon as the entity attacks a chicken, you can see that the animation actually plays. Now, there are actually two types of animations. There's the keyframed animation, which is what I just showed you, and that's with the animation controller. And then there's math-based variable animations. Now, I will be going through this in a bit more detail. However, that will be after the behavior animation controller, which we'll be doing now. So let's head on over back to Bridge, and I'll show you how to do behavior animations and behavior animation controllers. So behavior-based animation controllers and animations are actually very simple. They're not as difficult as client animation controllers and animations, since these just give you a lot more options, and they, well, usually a lot of things will actually confuse people. But with behavior animation controllers, they're actually quite useful in some circumstances, whether you don't want to run animations inside a function. They're an alternative to run animations or run commands via animation timelines. And to do that, well, to create your own, what we're going to do is we're going to create an animation controller. Then we're just going to define the animation controller inside the behavior of the entity. So behavior animation controllers are usually pretty much the same. All you have to do is just add the server animation controller. Then we just do the same thing. So we just assign mascot dot animation underscore controller, and that's pretty much all we have to do. And since both of them are, since both the behavior animation controller and the client animation controller are extremely different, what we can do is we can just copy this identifier and just paste it in. Doesn't really matter since these don't overwrite each other, so it really doesn't matter. So now that we've got our animation controller, you can see that we've got pretty much the same setup. However, as soon as we go inside the default, we can see that there are a few things that are different. Now it might say animations here, but what this is actually referring to is it wants the server animation file, which just runs commands based on an animation timeline. But for now, I'm just not going to do that for now. Then next you have the on entry, and this just runs commands when it enters this state or when it's changed to this state. So for example, if we selected on entry, we can see here that we can actually run commands inside here. So if I just type in /say idling. Now if you're doing this outside of Bridge, make sure you don't put a slash here, otherwise you're most likely going to run into an error because Bridge automatically removes this slash when it's compiling. So now that we've got our animation, we can just do something with this. So we can do the same thing as what we've done here, and we can just make it so when the entity is attacking, we can just do a /say attacking. So when the entity is attacking, it'll say attacking, and then when it says idling, or when it's idling, it's going to say idling. Now we just have to do the same thing as what we've done here. So we just have to do transitions, then the object, then we want attacking, and the same thing. So variable.attack_time is higher than 0.0. Then I believe if we do, there we go, and then we go back to the default state and variable.attack_time is lower than or equal to 0.0. So as soon as the entity is attacking, it'll say attacking, and then as soon as it's idling, it'll say idling. So let's head on over. Oh wait, actually I forgot something before saying that. We have to actually link this animation controller to the entity. And to do this, all we have to do is just go to the behavior of our entity. Then all you have to do is inside the description, we just put in a new key, so animations. Then we select animations, and then we just select, I believe I selected the wrong one. That doesn't seem right. If I can find where the animation controller is. Animations, that's not what I want. For some odd reason that's popping up, but that's not what I want. So if we type it in, controller.animation. I believe sign mascot. So, and then we just play the animation through the scripts. Ooh, whoops. Ah, that's what I was doing wrong. Okay, so apparently it's the same as the RP. I must have confused myself from here. So we just use the same key, and then there we go. We've got our animation controller right there. So now that we have an animation controller, we just call animate, and we just animate the animation controller. So now that's done, we can just go back to Minecraft and see if it works. And there we go. We can see it says idling. And then as soon as I spawn a chicken, it should say attacking and then idling. Yep, there we go. So that's pretty much all what the animation controller does. It just allows you to run commands. Same with the behavior animations. So I'll just show you that right now, which is all you have to do is just new file, animation. So server animation, and then we just do assign mascot, mascot.server.animation, if I can spell correctly. Then you can see here that we've got this timeline, and what we can do with this timeline is we can just add new fields. So 1.0, so that's, I believe, 1 tick, or 1 tick, which is, I believe, 50 milliseconds for this. And then with that we can actually just run commands. So we can just say, we can just do /say yeet or something like that, and then we'll say the animation length is, so right now I'm just not gonna do that, and then we say the animation length is 5 ticks or something like that, or let's just say 20 ticks. So now all we have to do is just link it up to the entity. So all we have to do is just do I believe it was sign animation. We can just do sign animation, and then we have to change this. So instead of animation.blank, we just do animation.sign mascot, and then there we are. We've got the animation, and then we'll just animate the animation. So now that's done, we can just go back into game and see if it works. And there we go, we can see on the chat it says yeet, and then after a little bit, after about, I believe, a few more seconds, I'm not sure how long it'll take for it, but yes, it should, yeah, it takes a while for it to animate to the end. I believe I didn't set looping to true, so that's why it's not looping, but that's pretty much how the server animation works. And then of course you can link that up with the animation controller and do the same stuff that you do with the regular animation controller. So now that we've covered both the animation controller and the animations, a lot of you might be asking, how do you do player animations? And I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's head on over back to BlockBench and let's modify the player animations. So modifying the player animations is actually quite relatively straightforward for PC users, since you can actually just copy and paste the player geometry from the game files. But for mobile users, you'll probably need to download the geometry itself and then import it into BlockBench. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So for mobile users, I'll actually be leaving a link down in the description below for downloading the player geometry. But for PC users or for Windows users like me, what you can do is you can go to your game files. So what you have to do is just go to local disk C, then program files, then Windows apps. Now, if for some reason you have this pop-up that says you're not allowed to access this, it's probably because you haven't set yourself to the ownership of the file, even though you're an administrator and you're the only person on this computer that has administrator. I did some funky stuff to make it so I would be the owner of this folder, so I can actually access this. But for most users who haven't done this way, I will also be leaving a link down, well actually a directory for the directory of the Minecraft files. And what you can do is you can just go up here and then you can just paste that directory into your file explorer and it should open up for you. So once you have navigated and found the Minecraft files, if I can find it real quick, There we are. What we're going to do is we're going to go to data. Then we're just going to go to skin packs, I believe it was. Then vanilla. And then you can see here, geometry.json. And if we open it up, we can see here that we've got geometry.humanoid.custom, which is what the player actually uses. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this geometry.json, and then we'll just paste it over to wherever you want it. So for now, I'm just going to put it in geometry.json inside the models. Then I'm just going to go back to BlockBench. So once you've copied your or downloaded or copied your geometry.json, what we're going to do is we're going to head on over back to BlockBench, then open model, then select the geometry.json, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to select geometry.humanoid.custom. And as soon as we import it, we've got the player model. You can see here we've got access to the waist, the body, the head, the cape, and all sorts of things. Now, don't get this confused with the armor or the player_armor.json geometry, which is in the Bedrock Samples file. Because the difference between the player model and the armor model is the armor model is overlaid on top of the player, while the actual player is the actual player model itself. So we have to actually go into the Minecraft game files and copy it over. For some odd reason, it's not included into the resource pack of the Minecraft files, but for now, this will do. So once you've got this copied over, what we can do is we can import the default player animations that are in the resource pack. So to do that, all we have to do is just go to Bedrock Samples. I will also be leaving a link down in the description below for this. Then what we can do is we can just go to animations. Then we can just search for player.animation. And of course, if you don't know, there is also a first person player animation. I believe if I can find it. Yes, you can see here. So there is actually a first person animation here. And what you can do is you can actually just edit this. So if the player is holding an item that requires the arms to be seen, you can just modify this and make it so the arms can be seen. But for now, we're just going to mess with the third person animations, which is the regular player.animation.json. So now that we've navigated to this file, we'll just download it. So download raw file on the top right. Then we just go to BlockBench creations here, and then we just save it there. So now that we've got the animation downloaded, we'll just go back to BlockBench, click on the animate tab. Then we'll just import animations. Then we'll go to animations and where we save the player.animation.json, and then we just click on open. Now, of course, we have a lot of animations that we can import, but for now, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to change the sneaking or the bob. I believe I'll just change the bobbing. So this is when the player is actually breathing or something. Then we can just click on confirm. And now we've got the bob animation. And if we look here, if we try and select, yep, there we go. We can see that the animation is actually playing. So, a lot of you might be wondering, well, what does this animation actually modify? Well, it modifies the left arm and the right arm. And you can see here that there are keyframes at 0, 0, but except when we move the timeline across, we can see the arms are actually animating. Now the reason for this is a math-based animation. And you can see here on the bottom left, we've got math.cos query.lifetime times by 103.2 times by 2.865, whatever. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify this so the arms would move up like this. And to do that, all we have to do is just change it so we can, well, what we can do is we can actually just copy this over, then we can paste this in. Now, a reason for math-based animations, or why this is actually a math-based animation, is due to the fact that this isn't always playing animation. So like the idling animation that I created before and I showed you on the custom entity, this will always play regardless of whether you're dead or whether you're swimming or whether you're, I believe, running or walking. This will always play. So to keep that in mind, what we're going to do is we're just going to use the same stuff that we got from here. So the animation will always play, but it's not based on keyframes. So this won't actually stuff up anything and it will all look smooth in the end. And that's the reason why math-based animation exists. So now that we've got the animation or the mathematics over here, we can just modify this however we need it. So right now we don't really need this, so we can just remove the end part of that, and then we'll just keep this negative. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to change it so it'll be a little bit more noticeable. So we just change this to, I believe we can just change this to 20, and that should make it move up a little bit more. And as soon as we move, yep, we can see here that the arm just moves like so, and it's actually quite noticeable. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to copy this and paste it over to the animation over here, and we can see here that the animation is actually playing. So if we wanted to make it a little bit faster, what we can do is we can just times the query.lifetime by a further, I believe we can change this to 180, and it should move faster. So we can see here that it's actually moving faster. Actually, I'll just change it 300 times faster. That might be better. Yep. This is already looking a bit stupid, but honestly it doesn't really matter. So we can just do that, and we can see here that the arms are moving back and forth as well as side to side. So now that we've got that done, what we're going to do is we're going to import this animation. Now we won't actually copy the player.animation.json inside the resource pack, and the reason for this is due to the fact that it will overwrite your game's existing player.animation.json, and this will pretty much break Minecraft. I've had to actually reinstall Minecraft because of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Bridge, then we're going to create a new animation, so client animation, then we just do custom.player.animation.json. Once you've named your file, we can just click on create, and now that we've got the animation in here, what we can do is we can just copy the animation that we edited from the player.animation and just paste it in here, and this will just overwrite the animation that we want to overwrite instead of replacing the entire thing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to navigate back to the player animation, and then we're just going to find the animation.player.bob, which is the one that we edited. Copy this over, and then we're just going to paste this inside the custom player animation. And that's all you really need to do, since this will actually just replace the player animation, and this will automatically pretty much applied to the player, since the player is actually already using it. So we can just go back into Minecraft, and if we look, yep, there we go. There is our animation, and the arms already are going a bit behind me, but it looks like I'm just swinging my arms. So, and if I walk, we can see here that the animation is also playing while I'm walking. So yes, so you can see pretty much how the math-based animation works. So what about attacking? Well, you pretty much do the same thing. However, if you wanted to do non-math based animations, well, things get a little bit tricky. The reason for this is due to the fact that you might need to replace the player client entity to actually edit edit the animation, so it's based on the keyframed animation instead of math-based animation. And the reason for this is the attack animation is also actually playing all the time. So how this actually works is a bit weird. So as soon as I punch, you can see here, if you remember the variable.attack_time that I talked about, that's pretty much being used for when the player is punching. And as soon as I punch, that variable goes from 0 to 1. And then the math-based animation animates for that variable. Now, if I've already confused you a lot, don't worry, it took a while to also get my head around this as well. So I've just tried to explain it as best as possible as I can, and that's pretty much all there is to this tutorial. Now, of course, you can replace the player.json. However, your animations or your add-on will not be compatible with other add-ons. So I've opted for this approach, so your add-on can still be compatible with other add-ons, except it's just modifying the animations directly. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.